Letterpress printing is a technique of relief printing using a printing press, a process by which many copies are produced by repeated direct impression of an inked, raised surface against sheets or a continuous roll of paper. A worker composes and locks movable type into the bed or chase of a press, inks it, and presses paper against it to transfer the ink from the type, which creates an impression on the paper. In practice, letterpress also includes other forms of relief printing with printing presses, such as wood engravings, photo-etched zinc cuts, and linoleum blocks, which can be used alongside metal type or wood type in a single operation, as well as stereotypes and electrotypes of type and blocks. With certain letterpress units, it is also possible to join movable type with slugs cast using hot metal typesetting. In theory, anything that is type high or 918 inches can be printed using letterpress. Letterpress printing was the normal form of printing text from its invention by Johannes Gutenberg in the mid-15th century until the 19th century, and remained in wide use for books and other uses until the second half of the 20th century. Letterpress printing remained the primary way to print and distribute information until the 20th century, when offset printing was developed, which largely supplanted its role in printing books and newspapers. All forms of data collection were affected by the invention of letterpress printing, as were many careers such as teachers, preachers, physicians and surgeons and artist engineers. More recently, letterpress printing has seen a revival in an artisanal form. History. Johannes Gutenberg is credited with the development in the Western Hemisphere, in about 1440, of modern movable type printing from individually cast, reusable letters set together in a form. Movable type was first invented in China using ceramic type in 1040 AD. Gutenberg also invented a wooden printing press based on the extant wine press, where the type surface was inked with leather-covered ink balls and paper laid carefully on top by hand, then slid under a padded surface and pressure applied from above by a large threaded screw. It was Gutenberg's screw press or hand press that was used to print 180 copies of the Bible, at 1,282 pages. It took him and his staff of 20 almost 3 years to complete. 48 copies remain intact today. This form of press work gradually replaced the hand-copied manuscripts of scribes and illuminators as the most prevalent form of printing. Printers' workshops, previously unknown in Europe before the mid-15th century, were found in every important metropolis by 1500. Later metal presses used a knuckle and lever arrangement instead of the screw, but the principle was the same. Ink rollers made of composition made inking faster and paved the way for further automation. Industrialization. With the advent of industrial mechanization, inking was carried out by rollers that passed over the face of the type, then moved out of the way onto an ink plate to pick up a fresh film of ink for the next sheet. Meanwhile, a sheet of paper slid against a hinged platen, which then rapidly pressed onto the type and swung back again as the sheet was removed and the next sheet inserted. As the fresh sheet of paper replaced the printed paper, the now freshly inked rollers ran over the type again. Fully automated 20th century presses, such as the Kludge and original Heidelberg platen, incorporated pneumatic sheet feed and delivery. Rotary presses were used for high-speed work. In the oscillating press, the form slid under a drum around which each sheet of paper got wrapped for the impression, sliding back under the inking rollers while the paper was removed and a new sheet inserted. In a newspaper press, a papier-mâché mixture called a flong used to make a mold of the entire form of type, then dried and bent, and a curved metal plate cast against it. The plates were clipped to a rotating drum and could print against a continuous reel of paper at the enormously high speeds required for overnight newspaper production. This invention helped aid the high demand for knowledge during this time period. North American history. Canada. Letterpress printing was introduced in Canada in 1752 in Halifax, Nova Scotia by John Bushell in the newspaper format. This paper was named the Halifax Gazette and became Canada's first newspaper. Bushell apprenticed under Bartholomew Green in Boston. Green moved to Halifax in 1751 in hopes of starting a newspaper, as it did not exist in the area. 2 weeks and a day after the press he was going to use for this new project arrived in Halifax, Green died. Upon receiving word about what happened, Bushell moved to Halifax and continued what Green had started. The Halifax Gazette was first published on March 23, 1752, making Bushell the first letterpress printer in Halifax, and eventually Canada. There is only one known surviving copy, which was found in Massachusetts Historical Society, United States. One of the first forms of letterpress printing in the United States was public occurrences, both foreign and domestic, started by Benjamin Harris. This was the first form of a newspaper with multiple pages in the Americas. The first publication of public occurrences, both foreign and domestic, was September 25, 1690. Revival and rise of craft letterpress. Letterpress started to become largely out of date in the 1980s because of the rise of computers and new self-publishing print and publish methods. Many printing establishments went out of business from the 1980s to 1990s and sold their equipment after computers replaced letterpresses' abilities more efficiently. These commercial print shops discarded presses, making them affordable and available to artisans throughout the country. Popular presses are, in particular, Vandercook cylinder-proof presses and Chandler and Amp price-plate presses. In the UK there is particular affection for the Arab press built by Josiah Wade in Halifax. Letterpress recently has had a rebirth in popularity because of the allure of handset type, and the differences today between traditional letterpress and computerized printed text. Letterpress is unique and different from standard printing formats that we are currently used to. Letterpress commonly features a relief impression of the type, although this was considered bad printing in traditional letterpress. Letterpress's goal before the recent revival of letterpress was to not show any impression. The type touched the paper slightly to leave a transfer of ink, but did not leave an impression. This is often referred to as the kiss. An example of this former technique would be newspapers. Letterpress today has a distinct goal of showing the impression of type, to distinctly note that it is letterpress. Since its revival, letterpress largely has been used for fine art and stationery, as its traditional use for newspaper printing is no longer relevant for use. Letterpress is considered a craft as it involves using a skill and is made by hand. This fine letterpress work is crisper than offset litho because of its impression into the paper, giving greater visual definition to the type and artwork, although it is not what letterpress traditionally was meant for. Today, many of these small letterpress shops survive by printing fine editions of books or by printing upscale invitations, stationery, and greeting cards. These methods often use presses that require the press operator to feed paper one sheet at a time by hand. Today, the juxtaposition of this technique and offbeat humor for greeting cards has been proven by letterpress shops like Zinc Press to be marketable to independent boutiques and gift shops. Briar Press is a community of thousands of printers and artists dedicated to the preservation of letterpress. Some of these printmakers are just as likely to use new printing methods as old, for instance by printing using photopolymer plates on restored vintage presses. Martha Stewart's influence. Letterpress publishing has recently undergone a revival in the USA, Canada, and the UK, under the general banner of the small press movement. Renewed interest in letterpress was fueled by Martha Stewart Weddings magazine, which began using pictures of letterpress invitations in the 1990s. In 2004 they state, "Great care is taken in choosing the perfect wedding stationery. Couples ponder details from the level of formality to the flourishes of the typeface. The method of printing should be no less important, as it can enliven the design exquisitely. That is certainly the case with letterpress." In regards to having printed letterpress invitations, the beauty and texture became appealing to couples who began wanting letterpress invitations instead of engraved, thermograph, or offset printed invitations. Education. The movement has been helped by the emergence of a number of organizations that teach letterpress, such as Columbia College Chicago's Center for Book and Paper Arts, Arts Center College of Design, and Armory Center for the Arts, both in Pasadena, Calif., New York's Center for Book Arts, Studio on the Square, and the NYC, the Wells College Book Arts Center in Aurora, New York. The San Francisco Center for the Book, Bookworks, Seattle's School of Visual Concepts, Olympia's The Evergreen State College, Black Rock Press, North Carolina State University, Washington, D.C.'s Corcoran College of Art and Design, Penland School of Crafts, the Minnesota Center for Book Arts, the International Printing Museum in Carson, CA, Western Washington University in Bellingham, Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia, and a Bauhaus Press at VCU in Richmond, Virginia. Economical materials. Affordable copper, magnesium and photopolymer plate makers and milled aluminum bases have allowed letterpress printers to produce type and images derived from digital artwork, fonts and scans. Economical plates have encouraged the rise of digital letterpress in the 21st century, allowing a small number of firms to flourish commercially and enabling a larger number of boutique and hobby printers to avoid the limitations and complications of acquiring and composing metal type. At the same time, there has been a renaissance in small-scale type foundries to produce new metal type on monotype equipment, Thomson casters and the original American type founders machines. Process. The process of letterpress printing consists of several stages: composition, imposition and lock-up, and printing. In a small shop, all would occur in a single room, whereas in larger printing plants, such as with urban newspapers and magazines, each might form a distinct department with its own room, or even floor. Composition, or typesetting, is the stage where pieces of movable type are assembled to form the desired text. The person charged with composition is called a compositor, setting letter by letter and line by line. Traditionally, as in manual composition, it involves selecting the individual typed letters from a type case, placing them in a composing stick, which holds several lines, then transferring those to a larger type galley. By this method, the compositor gradually builds out the text of an individual page letter by letter. In mechanical typesetting, it may involve using a keyboard to select the type, or even cast the desired type on the spot, as in hot metal typesetting, which are then added to a galley designed for the product of that process. The first keyboard-actuated typesetting machines, the linotype and the monotype, were introduced in the 1890s. After a galley is assembled to fill a page's worth of type, the type is tied together into a single unit so that it may be transported without falling apart. For this bundle a galley proof is made, which is inspected by a proofreader to make sure that the particular page is accurate. Imposition. Broadly, imposition or imposing is the process by which the tied assemblages of type are converted into a form, ready to use on the press. A person charged with imposition is a stoneman, doing the work on a large, flat imposition stone. More specifically, imposition is the technique of arranging the various pages of type with respect to one another. Depending on page size and the sheet of paper used, several pages may be printed at once on a single sheet. After printing, these are cut and trimmed before folding or binding. In these steps, the imposition process ensures that the pages face the right direction and in the right order with the right margins of facing pages add up to the form's total plus 1. 12 plus 1 equals 13, 24 plus 1 equals 25, etc. Low-height pieces of wood or metal furniture are added to make up the blank areas of a page. The printer uses a mallet to level the type to ensure the printing surface is flat. Lock-up is the final step before printing. The printer removes the cords that hold the type together, and turns with a key or lever to lock the entire complex of type blocks, furniture, and chase into place, creating what is called a form. The printer takes the finished form to the printing press for errors before starting the printing run. Printing. The working of the printing process depends on the type of press used, as well as any of its associated technologies. Hand presses generally require two people to operate them, one to ink the type, the other to work the press. Later mechanized jobbing presses require a single operator to feed and remove the paper, as the inking and pressing are done automatically. The completed sheets are then taken to dry and for finishing, depending on the variety of printed matter being produced. With newspapers, they are taken to a folding machine. Sheets for books are sent for book binding. You can distinguish a traditional letterpress printer from a digital printer by its debossed lettering. A traditional letterpress printer made a heavy impression into the stock, and producing any indentation at all into the paper would have resulted in the print run being rejected. Part of the skill of operating a traditional letterpress printer was to get the machine pressures just right so that the type just kissed the paper, transferring the minimum amount of ink to create the crispest print with no indentation. This was very important, as when the print exited the machine and was stacked, having too much wet ink and an indentation would have increased the risk of set-off. Variants on the letterpress. The invention of ultraviolet curing inks has helped keep the rotary letterpress alive in areas like self-adhesive labels. There is also still a large amount of flexographic printing, a similar process, which uses rubber plates to print on curved or awkward surfaces, and a lesser amount of relief printing from huge wooden letters for lower quality poster work. Rotary letterpress machines are still used on a wide scale for printing self-adhesive and non-self-adhesive labels, tube laminate, cupstock, etc. The printing quality achieved by a modern letterpress machine with UV curing is on par with flexo presses. It is more convenient and user-friendly than a flexo press. It uses water-wash photopolymer plates, which are as good as any solvent-washed flexo plate. Today, even CTP plates are available, making it a full-fledged, modern printing process. Because there is no analox roller in the process, the make-ready time also goes down when compared to a flexo press. Inking is controlled by keys very much similar to an offset press. UV inks for letterpress are in paste form, unlike flexo. Various manufacturers produce UV rotary letterpress machines, viz. Dashan, nickel, Tyokikai, Copac, Gallus, etc., and offer hot-cold foil stamping, rotary die cutting, flatbed die cutting, sheeting, rotary screen printing, adhesive side printing, and inkjet numbering. Central impression presses are more popular than inline presses due to their ease of registration and simple design. Printing of up to 9 colors plus varnish is possible with various online converting processes. Craftsmanship. Letterpress can produce work of high quality at high speed, but it requires much time to adjust the press for varying thicknesses of type. Engravings and plates. Called macaridi, the process requires a high degree of craftsmanship, but in the right hands, letterpress excels at fine typography. It is used by many small presses that produce fine, handmade, limited edition books, artists' books, and high-end ephemera such as greeting cards and broadsides. Because of the time needed to make letterpress plates and to prepare the press, setting type by hand has become less common with the invention of the photopolymer plate, a photosensitive plastic sheet that can be mounted on metal to bring it up to type high. To bring out the best attributes of letterpress, printers must understand the capabilities and advantages of what can be a very unforgiving medium. For instance, since most letterpress equipment prints only one color at a time, printing multiple colors requires a separate press run in register with the preceding color. When offset printing arrived in the 1950s, it cost less and made the color process easier. The inking system on letterpress equipment is the same as offset presses, posing problems for some graphics. Detailed, white areas, such as small serif type, or very fine halftone surrounded by fields of color, can fill in with ink and lose definition if rollers are not adjusted correctly. However, a skilled printer overcomes most of these problems. However, a letterpress provides the option of a wider range of paper, including handmade, organic, and tree-free. Letterpress printing provides a wide range of production choices. The classic feel and finish of letterpress papers takes printing back to an era of quality and craftsmanship. Even the smell of the ink, more apparent on a letterpress printed page than with offset, may appeal to collectors. While less common in contemporary letterpress printing, it is possible to print halftone photographs via photopolymer plates. However, letterpress printing's strengths are crisp lines, patterns, and typography. Creating artwork. Creating files for letterpress is similar to conventional printing with these exceptions. Ink color. Files are created using spot colors, not CMYK or RGB. A spot color is specified for each color to use. Typically 1 or 2 colors are used. Paper color. Dark ink on a light paper gives the best image. Inks are translucent and the paper color shows through. For light colors on dark paper, printers use foil stamping or engraving instead of letterpress. To build up color density, letterpress pieces can be run through the press 2 times using the same color. Screens. Grayscale images can be used if made with a coarse screen. A second color should be used instead of screening a color in most cases. Thickness. Art must be above 1/4 point and with no hairlines. Fonts. Type must be 5 points or larger for best results. For reverse type, the point size should be 12 point or larger. A smaller type with its thin stroke can fill in or plug. An outline stroke is often applied to allow for ink gain. Solids. Letterpress solids print differently than conventionally printed lithographic solids. While letterpress does lay down a thick film of ink, the process tends to show the texture of the sheet. Also, solid areas do not give the appearance of depth that fine type and thin lines do. Solid areas can also cause the paper to ripple, especially on thinner sheets. Registration. Letterpress does register well, however, it does not have the capabilities of modern offset printing. Trapping and key lines do not work well in letterpress printing. A blank area should be incorporated between colors. Black and very dark colors may be overprinted over lighter colors. Depth. The type depth is dependent on the paper. Typically, letterpress papers are thick and soft, so the type creates a deep impression. When making fold-over items, the printer typically backs off the pressure to avoid embossing the backside of the piece. Image and file prep. Letterpress excels at line copy and type, so vector images work well. Crop marks should be shown as a register color. Images need to bleed, die cut, emboss and scores. These effects work well with most letterpress paper. Images to emboss or die cut are called out in a different color layer. Scores are typically indicated with a cyan line. Any intricate shapes or patterns should be reviewed with the printer. For thick cover stocks, many printers use a kiss cut rather than a score. Envelopes. It is best to print on the flap of a ready-made envelope. Other areas of the ready-made envelopes can be printed, but bruising can occur on the other side of the envelope. Current initiatives. Several dozen colleges and universities around the United States have either begun or reactivated programs teaching letterpress printing in fully equipped facilities. In many cases, these letterpress shops are affiliated with the college's library or art department, and in others they are independent, student-run operations or extracurricular activities sponsored by the college. The college and University Letterpress Printers Association was founded in 2006 by Abigail Arteg at the Maryland Institute College of Art to help these schools stay connected and share resources. Many universities offer degree programs such as Oregon College of Art and Craft, Southwest School of Art, Middle Tennessee State University, School of the Art Institute of Chicago, Indiana University, Miami University, Corcoran College of Art and Design, and Rochester Institute of Technology. The current renaissance of letterpress printing has created a crop of hobby press shops that are owner-operated and driven by a love of the craft. Several larger printers have added an environmental component to the venerable art by using only wind-generated electricity to drive the presses and plant equipment. Notably, a few small boutique letterpress shops are using only solar power. In Berkeley, California, letterpress printer and lithographer David Owens maintains a studio with a variety of platen and cylinder letterpresses as well as lithography presses. He has drawn attention both from commercial printers and fine artists for his wide knowledge and meticulous skill with letterpress printing. He collaborated with restaurateur and free speech activist Alice Waters, the owner of Chez Panisse, on her book 30 Recipes Suitable for Framing. He has created strikingly colorful large posters for such Bay Area businesses and institutions as Acme Bread and UC Berkeley. In London, St Bride Library houses a large collection of letterpress information in its collection of 50,000 books. All the classic works on printing technique, visual style, typography, graphic design, calligraphy and more. This is one of the world's foremost collections and is located off Fleet Street in the heart of London's old printing and publishing district. In addition, regular talks, conferences, exhibitions and demonstrations take place. The St Bride Institute, Edinburgh College of Art, Central St Martin's College of Art and Design, the Arts University Bournemouth, Plymouth University, University for the Creative Arts Farnham and London College of Communication run short courses in letterpress, as well as offering these facilities as part of the graphic design degree courses. The Hamilton Woodtype and Printing Museum in Two Rivers, Wisconsin houses one of the largest collections of woodtype and woodcuts in the world inside one of the Hamilton Manufacturing Company's factory buildings. also included presses and vintage prints. The museum holds many workshops and conferences throughout the year and regularly welcomes groups of students from universities from across the United States. In 2011, John Bonadis and Jeff Adams created a virtual letterpress that runs on an iPad and replicates each step of the letterpress process. Letterpress was funded from a Kickstarter campaign enabling the developers to collect and digitize wood type from around the world. The app's press is modeled after a Vandercook SP15. In 2015, a renaissance of letterpress printing by artists is widely acknowledged.